Добрый вечер, дорогие друзья. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Cultural Educational Center Beit Juhuro. We have with us tonight a very, very special guest. We're very honored, Rabbi Gruman. He came all the way from New Jersey, from Twin Rivers, and we're very honored. Tonight's dinner and event is dedicated in memory of Pilo Bat Itztak. Thank you very much, Marek, for sponsoring tonight's evening. God bless you and your family, and your grandmother should have aliyah, her neshama. And just to tell you a little bit about the Rabbi, is very, very special, very well known in the Jewish world. And he got his smicha, rabbinic ordination from Lakewood Yeshiva, probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest yeshiva in the world. Very, very serious, high-level yeshiva. And he's a rabbi in Twin Rivers, New Jersey, for over 26 years already. And under his leadership, the community really developed. And now there's a roof, there's daf yomi, and anything that the community really needs, all the facilities. And it's really, in a lot of ways, it's his merit. He's in his family. He's a father of 6 and a grandfather. He's a really experienced parent. So tonight's topic is actually Jewish parenting. And he's also the founder of Project Gesher. He's very active in the world of Jewish outreach, and has a lot of many accomplishments, which I hope he can share with you a little bit. And without any further ado, thank you very much, Rabbi Gruman.
Thank you. Your exaggerations are a little bit too much, and Rabbi Brownwine used to say that. Everything they say about me is true. Some of them just didn't happen yet. So I don't like to take any credit. I just was fortunate to be involved in a wonderful Jewish community in New Jersey. Just a little bit of background. I grew up in Los Angeles, California. I guess for this community I should start my background with my father. My father was actually born in the Ukraine in a city called Shepetovka. Shepetovka. Yeah. And when he was a boy, they moved to a city called Oriol, which is in Russia proper. And then during the war, he moved to Samarkand in Uzbekistan. First Tashkent a little bit, but mostly in Samarkand. And so, as a lot of Russian Jews from the European part of Russia were pushed further east and then south, he was able to survive the war. And then my father just called me today, left me a message to tell me that today, approximately this day, in 1946, is when he was able to escape the Soviet Union. His father bought him a passport under the name Gruman, which is my name. Of course, my uncle had a passport from the name Stillerman, which was a different name. And when I asked him why he didn't change back to the original name, which was Rector, eventually when he came to America, he said because his mother said that before World War I it was a different name. So what's the point? There's no real names. It's just what it says on a piece of paper.
But still Jewish last name though.
Yeah, they were all Jewish last names. So he actually lived first in Poland. He was living in Lodz, and he used to describe how, since his passport was Polish, but he was really Russian, for 6 months his mother didn't want him to be out on the streets too much. It was nice to be free, but it was difficult nevertheless. And then eventually he lived in France and came to yeshiva in Lakewood in 1950. And he received his smicha from the Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood, and then he moved out to Los Angeles in 1958. And he moved the same time as the Brooklyn Dodgers moved to Los Angeles. Now, I know culturally that might not mean much to anybody here, but that was certainly a New York milestone. And so I had the good fortune of growing up in Los Angeles. And I moved to Twin Rivers in 1989 together with my wife, who's from Brooklyn. As Rabbi Ephraim said, Our community was one, and is one still, that has all different types of Jews, you know, more religious, less religious, black hat, no hat, yellow yarmulke, green yarmulke, no yarmulke, doesn't matter. We have, everybody's there, and we like to think of ourselves as one big happy family. And when Ephraim came to us for the Shabbos and he described a little bit of our community, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really have a sense of what it was. Now I come here and I see people as young as, what's your name? Shlomo. How old are you, Shlomo? Shlomo's 9. And I'm sure that someone who's here is at least, someone might be 50 years older than you here, right? Somebody here is at least 59. I won't go beyond that. But he was right when he said we have all ages coming to learn. Very, very impressed. And yashkach to you, and thank you for inviting me and for sharing some time with you. Ephraim asked me to speak a little bit about chinuch habanim, Jewish education. Now, my one caveat, I can only speak about Jewish education if my children are not here. Because if they'd be here, then maybe I would lose all credibility, I don't know. And maybe they don't see things the way I see them. But I find that the topic of Jewish education, of raising children, is a little bit misleading because it's like you think that there's this subject that is specific called raising children. But really, raising children is just as much about raising yourself as it is about raising children. So I'm going to meander all over the place, and I'm going to take the liberty of not necessarily focusing. And what's great about having kids here is feel free to argue. If anything I'm saying you think is wrong, please, anybody, please argue, and we'll have some interesting debate. So I thought to myself, in my own life, as a rabbi and as a father and now a grandfather, and having had the opportunity to interact with all different types of people, I thought to myself, if I were to start and ask myself, what's the most essential ingredient in raising of children, I'm going to say something that I would bet many of you, as I first did, many of you are going to roll your eyes. And you're going to say, this is such a rabbi way of talking. That's not rolling your eyes. You know how to roll your eyes?
I do.
Okay, how do you roll your eyes? You don't know how to. Okay. And I'm going to explain to you why I think this is so essential. And I'll tell you where I got this from. I was once sitting with my wife, with Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky, the great Rosh Hashiva, who, Baruch Hashem, I've merited having some of his time. And I asked him for an appointment. I had to discuss something with him together with my wife. He said, you can come to my office, I'll give you time, but I just want you to know that I might have to answer the phone in the middle because I have some calls I'm expecting. So don't think I'm rude. I'm telling you beforehand, you can come at 10 o'clock in the morning, but I'm going to be taking these calls. Fine. So in the middle of the conversation, he got a phone call, and his secretary buzzed in and said, Kamenetsky, Dr. So-and-so is on the line. So he picks up the phone, and he says, Dr. So-and-so, how are you? Tell me something, doctor. Before the man had a chance to say anything, he said, tell me something, doctor. Do you pray for your patients? Because a doctor has to daven, has to pray for his patients. And a Rabbi, a teacher, has to daven, pray for his talmidim. And then he looks at me, he says, and a rabbi has to pray for his mispalim. Okay, doctor, how can I help you? Mispalim, the people that belong to his synagogue, his members, the people there. And it was just something that he fell into his head, and then he went on to the conversation, whatever they had to talk about, and they finished. And I was thinking to myself that obviously if Rabbi Kamenetsky felt it worthy of introducing this at the beginning of the conversation, it must be something that's essential. So when I share this essential idea, which to me is the number one thing that a parent can do for their child, number one, before anything, is to pray, to daven to Hashem on behalf of your child. Now you'll say, sounds like a very spiritual, it's not practical. Okay, maybe it helps, prayer helps for everything. What's it got to do with children? So let me tell you why I think it's so essential and why it's very practical and how it makes all the difference in the world. Because if you think about it, the idea of praying is absurd. Think about this for a second. Let's say, do you have a car? Do you want a car? What kind of car do you want?
Subaru STI.
Subaru, okay. So imagine, he wants a BMW, he wants a Subaru, okay. Okay, you'll take any BMW you can get. Let's not push it, okay? Okay. So you want a Subaru, right?
Yeah.
You want it badly?
No.
Not that badly. How old are you?
18.
18. Okay, soon you'll want it badly. Okay. So imagine, what's your first name?
Jason.
Jason. So imagine, Jason, you come to the shul and you daven, Hashem, please, please, I want a Subaru. Please give me a Subaru. Think about it for a second. Who are you praying to? You're praying to God. So presumably, God knows what you want. Otherwise, you wouldn't pray to Him. Right? God could deliver a Subaru. Otherwise, you wouldn't pray to Him. Right? If it was just a wall, there's no point. So you're praying to God, who could deliver a Subaru, who knows what's best for you, right? Who knows whether you need a Subaru. So why bother praying? He knows already. What's the point? What's the point of any tefillah? God, please help me get my job. I need a job. I don't have a job.
To come closer to.
What?
To come closer to.
To come closer. How do you come closer?
By praying.
By praying?
Well, you're hoping that your movements of everything that you do to it, and also including by praying, that you make a step closer.
Okay, let me, can I tweak it out a little bit? Because I think, so, this is actually something that happened years ago. There was a guy who didn't want a Subaru, he didn't want a BMW, he grew up like I did in Los Angeles, and he wanted a Jaguar. XJ12. I don't know what they're up to now, but that's what it was, XJ12. Is that a good car, XJ12? Okay. So, he comes to the rabbi, he says, Rabbi, I don't understand, I heard your sermon, and you said that if a person prays fervently, honestly, and meticulously every day, God answers all prayers. And I've been praying for my Jaguar, and it's 6 months already, I don't have a Jaguar. God doesn't answer my prayers. So the rabbi says, of course He answered. The answer is no.
Excuse me.
No, but it's not a joke. It is a joke. But let's play it out. What's really happening when you pray? When you pray, how do you become closer to God by praying? Why does prayer make you closer to God? Prayer is more about the person praying than the person you're praying to. Prayer is an acknowledgement, God, I am not in control. It's not up to me. I could put forth my effort. I could send out resumes. I could get a good education. I could knock on doors, network, call people. But at the end of the day, my role is limited. God, you have the power and the desire to get me a job, to get me a car, or to have my children grow up to be a mensch. By acknowledging that, by building a relationship based on that, the Gemara says, the Talmud says, Shlosha Shutabadim, there's 3 partners in the creation of a human being. The mother, the Father and God. The Talmud doesn't say this. I'll say God's the senior part. Father and mother, they're the junior part. It's not 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Everybody contributes something, but God is the senior part. Now, let's play this out. The more a person prays to God for anything, the more they acknowledge that the world is God's world and that we are connected to the infinite, the more we do that, the better the chance that God invests in us. If you go to somebody, you have a business, you have a startup, and you want somebody to put some seed money into your startup. So what's your goal? Your goal is to show him, why am I trustworthy? What's the return? Why will I be successful? Why you should feel comfortable taking your money and putting it in my project. That's what you're trying to do when you knock on the door of a VC or any similar type of startup. That's what you're trying to do. First you go to your friends, they'll have a little rahmanas on you, right? And they'll give you a few dollars, but then when you want the serious money, you got to go to somebody who you could show. When you're praying, this is what you're doing. You're saying, God, invest in me. I'm a great investment. I have the number one quality. You know what the number one quality is? I'm completely connected to you. I'm completely reliant on you. Now, that doesn't mean that you could sit in the corner. Completely reliant means I do all the things you ask me to do. I make my hishtadlut, which means my efforts. I make my efforts. So now let's play this out as it comes to parenting. When it comes to parenting, the more you acknowledge God in anything, the less your ego plays a role. I would say that probably the biggest mistakes that we make as parents, those of us who make mistakes, is when we get angry, when we get frustrated, and almost every time we get angry, it's because of our ego. Almost every time we don't do the smart thing, instead we do the quick and easy thing, it's because of our ego. I'll give you a personal example. Personal example. You think it's easy being a rabbi's son? So I have it on two sides. I am a rabbi's son, and my children are rabbi's sons. Okay? So, you know, there's a very nice picture in a shul where Papa comes to Beit Knesset on Saturday morning, and his son sits very nicely next to him, and there comes some time and he sits in his seat for 3 hours until the tefillah is over. That's a nice picture. I wasn't that kid. I couldn't sit for 3 minutes. Forget about 3 hours. You're also not that kid? Okay.
Still be a rabbi.
What? Yeah. So now there's a lot of different things that my father could tell me. And there's a lot of things that I could say to my son. You know what the worst thing I could say to my son who wouldn't sit for 3 minutes? You're such an embarrassment. You're the rabbi's son and you're running around like that. It's embarrassing. The rabbi's son is running around like a Vilda Chaya. You know what Vilda Chaya is? That's the... You want to explain? Yeah.
What is it?
Wild animal.
Can you say it in Russian? Okay, whatever. Zhulik. There must be some good Russian word for it. There must be some expression. Because when you make it about you, like the mother who had to go to school because the principal called her up, and she's embarrassed. And she has to walk in the middle of the day, and she has to leave her job, and she has to go to school, to the principal's office to talk about little Maxie. I'm sure it never happened to you. Once. Don't give too much information. Don't give too much information. When a mother says, it's so embarrassing, it's so difficult for me to leave work, then it's about her. What education is when you let go of your ego. It's not about me. It's about you. It's about the child. We'll get back to that.
So what you should see?
Patience. Rega, savlanut. Savlanut. Thank you very much. I just want to say, by the way, that in my opinion, almost any tips on parenting are obvious. Almost all of them are obvious. It's just that people are not mindful. Because what usually happens is, I'll just tell you a story. There was a young couple. They were not religious, and I asked a friend of mine in Lakewood if they could host this young couple for Friday night Shabbat meal for a Shabbat. So my friend says to me, my first name is Aaron, he says, Aaron, you want them to come to my house? You know I have 7 kids. And the Friday night, it could get very, very interesting at the table. You know, one of them could slam the door and go upstairs and not come back, and the other one could grab some piece of kugel from the other one's plate, and it could get very, very rowdy. Are you sure you want to take this non-religious family and bring them to my house where I'm going to expose them to Yiddishkeit? Are you sure you want to do it? I said, listen, I know you. I'm not playing games here. Shabbat is Shabbat. Big families are big families. No problem. Okay? So they went for Shabbos. And I spoke to this young couple, Matzah Shabbos after. I said, how was it? Best Shabbat I ever had in my life. Really? I figured to myself, oh, the kids must have behaved. Maybe they gave them some drugs or something to calm them down. I don't know. Maybe they gave them extra wine. I don't know. Maybe they sent them away. I figured it must be, right? I said, they all behaved? She said, no. No. No, they were pretty rambunctious. She says, but let me tell you something. I came 20 minutes before Shabbat to the house. And 10 minutes before Shabbat, before candle lighting, I sat with Mrs. So-and-so, and she lit the candles. And when she lit the candles, I listened to her pray. And I heard her say in Hebrew, Bizakeni legadel banim ubanos, I should merit to raise children. And she covered her eyes. And I heard her saying something about each child, whatever that child needs. And I was already very moved. And then during the meal, whenever one of the kids acted up, I wasn't surprised at all how calm, how relaxed. She never got frazzled. She let them be kids. Because it was so obvious that a woman who had just prayed the way she prayed was going to very, very calmly deal with each child the way the kid needed to be done. Because when you pray, besides from the special spiritual aspect of prayer, prayer is mindfulness. Prayer is letting go of ego. Prayer is mindfulness. You know what else prayer is? So I grew up in Los Angeles, and I was a big sports fan. That was my outlet. So this again, maybe culturally, this is not something that's going to resonate with everybody here, but I love the Dodgers. The Dodgers, that was my team, and I was always rooting for them. When I was about 10 years old, there was a very important game coming up. And I decided that I'm going to go to shul, and I'm going to pray that the Dodgers should win. Then I said to myself, you know, I'll bet you if I pray for the Dodgers to win, God's going to be so angry at me for wasting my prayer on something so stupid, he's going to make them lose. And I have this whole debate in my 10-year-old brain, back and forth. Should I pray? Should I not pray? Should I not pray? And I figured, if I don't pray, maybe that will make them win. And I remember being tormented by, what do you think? Think I should pray or not pray? No. What do you think? You think you should pray? Yeah? What do you,
I think you should pray.
yeah, you think God cares whether the Dodgers win or the Yankees win?
The players should pray, not me. Did you make any bets?
So actually, I think that you're onto something over there. Because does God care? I think God cares that you should be happy, if that will serve the greater purpose. But this is the point. When you pray, you are forced to come up with what your priorities are. When you pray, you start to ask yourself, what's important? What's not important? So prayer is prioritizing, it's being mindful, and it's acknowledging that you're not in control. I had a teacher who used to say the following about parenting. And if I could say one thing that you walk away with, this is it. A parent always has to ask themselves the following question. Simple question. What does this child need? That's it. What does this child need? Let me give you the scenario. Maybe this resonates with a woman more than with a man, especially in our culture. It's 4:30 p.m. Kid comes bursting home from school. Ma, I'm starving. That's usually 4:30. Ma is in the middle of cooking supper, on the phone with her mother-in-law, trying to buy something cheap on Amazon, also trying to make sure that the baby doesn't wake up from the 4:30 nap. And maybe Ma says, you know what? Go to your room and do your homework. Or maybe Ma says, go watch some program on television for a half an hour. Or maybe Ma says something, anything to buy a little more time. But maybe Ma says, what does he need right now? Does he need that snack? Maybe yes, maybe not. Maybe he just needs Ma to drop everything for 5 minutes, sit down, give them a cookie, and ask them how their day was. And then go back to what she's doing. Every parent's going to answer this question differently. There's no right and there's no wrong. It's not the answer, it's the question. What does the child need? That's why, to me, when you start off as number one with prayer, it orients your thinking towards what is the need of the child, not what's the need of the parent. Now, moving from prayer to what I think is a very related topic. Again, it sounds like it's a very religious aspect, but rest assured that it's very, very practical. You know, there's a prayer that we call Shemona Esrei. Are you familiar with the word Shemona Esrei?
Amidah.
So the right word is Amidah. Shemona Esrei is the tefillah that we say every day. And the reason they call it Shemona Esrei instead of Amidah is because it used to have 18 blessings. Shemona Esrei is the number 18. And then they changed it, they added one more, so it's 19 blessings. Most of the blessings, thank you very much, of the Amidah are requests from God. We say to God, God, give me brains. That's one of the first things we ask for. Because if you don't have brains, you don't know what to ask for. So you got to start off, give me brains. Rifa'enu Hashem, God, heal me. Barech Aleinu, God, give me parnasa. Right? Galenu, God, if a person feels trapped by something, release me. Right? We ask all kinds of things we ask from God. Every day, this is what a Jew prays for. What's the last blessing that we make? The last blessing of the Amidah? Peace. Sim shalom. Give me peace. So the Talmud asks, why is shalom, peace, the last thing that we ask for? Why is shalom all the way at the end? So the Talmud says something fascinating. En kli machzik bracha ela hashalom, which means the vessel which holds the blessing is peace. Very simple way of illustrating this. Imagine you send your son in the old village to do some shopping for Shabbos. Go to the vegetable store, go to the bakery, go buy some fish, and go buy some meat. And you have a big, big basket. And he goes to the vegetable store, and he goes to the bakery, and he goes to the fish, and he goes to the meat. And he comes home, and you live up a hill, and he doesn't know there's a hole on the bottom of the basket. And as he's walking up the hill, first some oranges fall out, and then because the oranges made it a little bigger, then some of the challah fell out, and by the time he gets to the end, he's very light basket, because everything fell out. Says the Gemara, Kli machzik bracha, the vessel that holds the blessing is shalom. If you don't have peace, then every blessing that you get from God just falls right out. You get the blessing, and it falls right out. I want to tell you an incredible story. This is with a friend of mine. Maybe it's for some of the older, we're all kids, the older kids. And this is a true story. I had a friend, his name was David, and he married a young lady named Sarah. And I liked David. He was a lot of fun to be with. He was a real jolly guy. And I didn't know Sarah too well, but all her friends liked her. And everybody liked, all the men liked spending time with David. And Sarah was very popular. But to be very honest, when we spent time with David and Sarah together, it was very uncomfortable. They would fight and argue and bicker, and David would say sharp things to make jokes just to be, and it was not pleasant. And it got to the point where I took it upon myself after maybe a couple years of marriage. I said, David, you're a great guy. Maybe you should go get some help because, this is not a good scene. He was very offended that I said it, so, I didn't say anything. And then I know a half a year later, someone said something to his wife. I don't know, it was a very tense relationship. Anyway, after a few years, they moved actually out of town. They moved to the West Coast. And I didn't hear much about them. I had a little bit here and there. I heard some things, but I didn't really keep up. About 6 years ago, I spent a Shabbat, Sheva Brachot, it was a Shabbat after a wedding, Shabbat Chatan, it's called, when a relative of mine got married. And wouldn't you know, who was related to the other side? David and Sarah. And we spent the whole Shabbat together. We were in a hotel, and we ate all the meals. They put us on the same table, and I was amazed. It was like they were a young couple that were on a honeymoon. I was looking, I thought maybe it was the wrong people. It was great. I didn't realize, I'm not stupid, I'm not going to say anything, right? I kept all my thoughts to myself, but I was wondering, what happened? What happened? I didn't say a word. At Sudash Lishit, David calls me aside, he says, I know what you're thinking. He says, I know what you're thinking. He says, you don't have to say anything, because I know what a jerk I was. He says, let me tell you what happened. He said, about 10 years ago, I went to the doctor, and they found a malignant tumor. And they told me that this could kill you. It's not 100% sure that this will kill you, but this is a very, very serious cancer. And radiation, chemotherapy, the whole works. I got scared. So what did I do? I went to my rabbi. I said, Rabbi, you got to help me out. You got to pray for me. I'll put you on the list for prayers. Then I called my friends in the yeshiva from the old days. I said, do me a favor. You got to make a minyan to pray for me. No problem. We'll make a minyan to pray for you. And then I flew to Israel to a big rabbi. And I went to him and I said, Rabbi, this is the story. The doctor said this is very serious. I'm 44 years old. I've got kids. I need your help. So the rabbi says to me, how's your shalom bias? How's your harmony in your house? How's your shalom in your house? I will lie to a rabbi? I didn't lie, I told him the truth. He says to me, you have to fix it. So I said to him, David says, Yeah, you know, you're right, I should fix it. You know, maybe when I come out of the hospital, he says, no, you have to fix it now. He says, Rabbi, I didn't come here for marital advice. I came here because I have a malignant growth. He says to me, this is what David tells me. He says, you have all the prayers in the world, and God will answer them, and He will send you a bracha. And you know what's going to happen with that bracha? It's going to fall right out the hole. It's not that God doesn't answer the tefillah, He answers it. And He gives you bracha. And you just let it slip away if you don't have shalom. And that's true about husband-wife relationships. And it's even more true about raising children in an environment where there is no harmony. Because kids are not stupid. Kids get it. Sometimes they don't even know that they get it until years later. But they get it. I'll just share with you a story. I don't know if it's a true story, but it certainly has a powerful message. Let me just look at the time because I don't want to.
5 to 9.
I'm going to skip the story.
Don't skip the story. I want the story.
I'm gonna maybe I'll get back to it. It's 8:53. I have 7 minutes.
Oh, it's okay. We can go over.
You know, when I was first married, we hosted in our house in Twin Rivers. First, we were married. We had, I don't know, 3 kids. We had a parenting workshop in our home, and the woman who gave the workshop was telling us about how important it is to make sure to balance criticism of your children with positive comments about them. So she said, and she gave a few examples. So there was one lady, and she says, what should I do? I have this 4-year-old kid, and he's climbing on the counters of the kitchen all the time, and he's climbing on the table, and he's climbing everyone. He's already 4 years old. He's not a baby. He's 4 years old. And all day he does this. And the second thing that he does all day is he's always going into the nosh drawer. You know what the nosh drawer is? No, anybody know what a nosh drawer is? It's the drawer where they keep the candy and the cookies. And all day, before dinner, and in the middle of dinner, he's always taking it. And I don't know what to do about it. And then she asks the following question. She says, so one day, I must have told him 20 times, don't climb on the counter, don't climb on the table. And I must have told him 10 times, stop taking the nosh in the middle of the day. And wouldn't you know it, it's 5 minutes before supper, and I see him climbing onto the kitchen counter, climbing on to get the cookie jar, which I put all the way up top, you shouldn't reach it. And you're telling me that I should balance my criticism with compliment? What possible compliment could I give him? This was her question. So you know what she said? She said, tell him, wow, you're such a good climber. Tell him, I didn't think you'd be able to reach the jar without breaking it. You think it's a joke? Let me tell you. If you count a parent who has an active child in the house, how many negative comments you make versus how many positive, you'll be amazed. So here's the mashal. Here's the parable to wait. My daughter once asked me, it was Saturday night, she wanted money to go buy something in Toys R Us. I told her we'll have to do it on Monday because I have to go to the bank to deposit a check. So she says, why can't you go to the ATM machine and get cash now? I said, because I don't have enough money to put into the bank. She says, you have to put in the money into the bank? I thought the banks have to take money out. So I said, yes, banks have to take money out. But you have to first put money in, because if you don't put the money in, then there's nothing to take out. Criticism is a withdrawal. Do you know how many deposits you have to make in order to make withdrawals? Because if you don't have that loving relationship with your child, in order to be able to criticize them, they're never going to listen to you, and they're never going to grow. here was the story that I was going to tell you. It was about a couple that didn't have such a good relationship. And the woman comes to the rabbi and she says, Rabbi, what should I do? My husband, he makes fun of me, he's nasty, he's cruel to me. So he says, I'm going to tell you what to do. Every time he says something not nice and appropriate, I want you to go to the basement, take a piece of wood, and take a nail and bang a nail into the wood. So, for the next week, every single time he said something, she goes down to the basement and she bangs a nail into the wood. He starts to think she's crazy. Finally, he goes down and he sees a piece of wood with nail after nail after nail. She says, what is this? So she says, every single time this week that you said something nasty to me, I banged the nail in. So he goes and he counts 97 nails. This is terrible. He says, you know what? Every time I say something nice to you, will you take out a nail? She says, of course. So a week goes by, and every single day, she would go down, and whatever time he says something nice, she pulls out a nail. Finally, it's the last nail, number 97, and she goes downstairs, and she pulls out the nail. And the husband says to her, he says, wow, thank God. All the nails are out of the board, and everything is all right. And she says, yeah, but look at the board. Look how many holes are in it. You think a kid doesn't have a little mark for every critical comment? You think the holes aren't there? Do you know how much love has to come before you could say a sharp line is never necessary? It's never. Criticism is an essential part of education. You cannot raise children without criticizing. But the art of criticism is a criticism that's rooted in love. You asked me to speak about this. I made some notes, so I don't want to leave on.
We can take another few minutes.
Okay, I don't want to leave on negative. I want to address one more piece of this and then wrap it up. And I want to hear your opinion about this. So there was a school in Israel, a Beit Yaakov school, and they had a problem. Somebody was vandalizing the school. The principal would come, and the principal would see that somebody jammed the locks, and somebody was playing with the sewer line, and all kinds of mischief. So the principal had a great idea. What did he do? He set up video cameras, and he decided he's going to catch the person that's doing it. So one day, Moshe gets a call from the principal. Principal says, Moshe, could you come to my office yet? Moshe, I want to show you a video. So he shows the video, and Moshe sees a bunch of boys climbing over a gate, and a bunch of boys running and jamming a lock, and a bunch of boys this and that. All of a sudden, the frame freezes. Do you recognize this boy? Moshe's embarrassed. It's his son. He says, yeah, that's my son. He says, okay. I just want you to know your son might be interested. I plan to take this to the police. Take the police? He was very interested. So he came running, had a meeting. I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. And how much money do I owe you? And that was the end of the story. Moshe got caught. Moshe paid the price. His father punished him. And the principal no longer had people breaking in. So this noted educator was asked, is this the best way to handle that situation? What do you think? Tell me what you think. Before we get to the kids, what do you think? What do you think about that? What do you think?
I'm interested in what the boys have to say.
We'll get to the boys. What do you think?
Probably not if you ask me.
I think, you're asking me, I think it's, It's really
Like, why not?
Well, the principal didn't punish the student directly. He let the father decide the best approach to take. He let the father know that this is a problem, and he let the father sort of explain it to the child.
Okay, boys, what do you think?
If I was a personally,
Ask them first.
Huh?
Ask them first.
So let me tell you what Rabbi Brizek said. This is what Rabbi Brizek said. You guys don't want to answer. Rabbi Brizek said that the educational lesson that was taught is don't create mischief and don't create vandalism, because if you do, you might get caught. And if you get caught, you're going to have to pay the price. That's okay. That's not education. That's not education. That's a way of preventing vandalism, which is a nice thing. It's a good thing. This is not about the right or wrong of it. We're talking about education. What is education? Education is creating an environment where a child on his own, education means to draw out from within the person the knowledge. Inculcation is when you stuff him with knowledge, right? Education is when the knowledge comes out. Education is creating an environment so that life lessons can be absorbed. That is what education is. Of course, a principal has to do something to stop vandalism. Stopping vandalism is very important. That's not education. Education is creating an environment where life lessons can be absorbed. Life lessons are absorbed when a parent has a relationship with a child. That answers that you asked me earlier. What should you do? When a parent has a relationship with a child that's positive, they can talk about anything. They can deal with the worst issues, the most difficult, the most challenging, if the child and the parent have a relationship. If the child doesn't respect the parent, if the parent is has an attitude of, you're the child, you have to listen to what I say, they'll listen to what you say, because you have all the cards. But that's not education. Let me close with the following. Some of the greatest Jewish leaders talk about what it was like growing up in their own homes. Rabbi Reuven Feinstein said that his father, the great Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, no matter who was at the Shabbos table, always put his two sons right next to him. And we knew that we were more important to him than the most important guest. When I moved to Twin Rivers in 1989, it was before Rosh Hashanah. And I remember the first year of Rosh Hashanah, we had all kinds of people. And Yom Kippur, we had even more people. I didn't know where these people were coming from. And then came Sukkot, and the crowd dwindled. And I didn't see a lot of these people. And Simchas Torah and Chanukah and Purim, very small crowd. On the day before Pesach, early in the morning, Passover, the day before Pesach, I came to shul early, and we have what's called Siyum B'char. Are you familiar with Siyum B'char? Siyum B'char is an Ashkenazi tradition that the day before Passover, the firstborns fasted. And I saw 4 people in shul that had not been there a whole year. I saw them Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and I did not see them. Not Sukkot, Simchas Torah, I didn't see them the whole year. And I was scratching my head. Now's when they come for the Siyum B'char, for this small little custom. So I can't hold myself back. I have a big mouth. I walk over to one of them, and I said to him, tell me, it's so interesting to me that I didn't see you the whole year since Rosh Hashanah Kippur, and now of all things you come to Siyum B'char. What's that all about? So he told me something that to me was so powerful. He says, you know, I grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And I'm the firstborn. My fondest child memory was when my father woke me up, nobody else in the house. It was just me and him. And it was dark outside. And he would take me and say, come, let's go, just me and you. And we would go to the bakery to buy the last bagel before Pesach, the last piece of chametz, the last bagel they had, we would get. And we would go to the shul for this special ceremony, just me and my father. Since then, I never miss a simcha. Because the power of a parent making a child feel so special never ever leaves. Thank you.
Any questions you want to ask?
Oh, yeah.
Questions, comments, rebuttal? I took the whole floor,
So the first question you mentioned, the doctor asking if the doctor prays for his patients and then the rabbi praying for his also like other students and people who come to the shul. Is the teacher in non-rabbinical setting, like more in the schools, are they supposed to pray for their students? Like what?
Do you know there's in the Torah, there's something called the Arei Miklat, the city of refuge. If a person, in the times of old, if a person killed somebody by accident, the punishment was he had to go to a special city. And he had to live in that city until the Kohen Gadol died. Which is a very strange idea. He had to stay in the city till the Kohen Gadol died. What's up with that? So the Talmud explains that the Kohen Gadol had a job to pray for the welfare of all of the people of Israel. And if somebody was killed, even by accident, a little bit is blamed on the Kohen Gadol. So Rav Wolbe asked, but where does it say in the Torah that the Kohen Gadol has to pray for the people? It doesn't say anywhere that the Kohen Gadol has to pray for the people. So Rav Wolbe said, it's so obvious that anyone who has people relying on him has to pray for those people. No matter what you're doing, if you have people that are relying on you, a doctor has patients, a parent has children, a very rich man who gives a lot of tzedakah to help out organizations, they become reliant on him. It becomes his responsibility.
Employees and the boss?
A boss for sure should pray for his employees. They're relying on him. First of all, he should pray for himself. He should have enough money to give them. One of the biggest hasadim, one of the biggest acts of compassion you can do for somebody is pray for them. What do you say, boys? Comments, questions? So well-mannered.
Question to your last thing that you said, when the father took care of the problems at school, paid off for the lots and everything, and then whatever, punished the kid and just went off. Did you give him a lesson that whatever goes wrong, that you can still do it, I'll take care of your problems? I mean, it's also kind of not...
I would agree with you. In other words, there's no question that there has to be a consequence when a kid does something like an act of vandalism. But to me, the way I look at you have to work your way back from the end result. The end result is you want the child to feel and be in a position to understand why he should never do something like that. The first thing you got to do when you sit down with the child is, why did you do that? So maybe he did it because of peer pressure. Maybe he did it because he was bored. Well, if he's giving in to peer pressure, it's not going to help just that he got punished. He has to have a tool to stand up to the peers that are doing things like that. If he did it because he's bored, then you have to figure out why is he bored? What's missing? That doesn't mean that, of course he has to have a consequence. He should probably come up with something, how he could pay for it. What kind of work can he do to earn the money to pay for it, or to work for the school, or do all those things. But the point behind the story is that you have to ask yourself, what do I want the child to get out of this? When this is all said and done, when it's over, what do I want the child to walk away with? That's what education is. Education is, there's a pasuk in the Chumash. Chanoch, not the Chumash, in the Mishnah. Chanoch lenar al pi darko. That's the famous phrase. Educate a child according to his path. Not according to your path, according to his path. Many parents like to educate their children according to their path. But maybe that child doesn't want to play the piano, and maybe he shouldn't be playing the piano. Maybe he should, but it's what's the child? Chanoch lenar al pi darko, gam ki yaskin. But it has to be something so that when he becomes a zaken, when he becomes old, it'll still be with him. It's a life lesson. It's not something that just solves a temporary problem.
Okay. You said that not to push the child to do whatever you did before. Let's say you said the piano playing, whatever it is. So you saying that to give the child a choice?
No, I'm saying that you should, at the appropriate age for the child, you should try to figure out what's the best way for this child to reach his potential. As a parent, you have to make a judgment. There are certain children that have intellectual capabilities, and if you don't draw them out and don't give them the tools to draw them out, they'll be bored in school, they'll become the biggest troublemakers because you didn't give them the ability to push themselves to work a little harder. Then there are children that if you push them too hard and you ask them to do things, then you're also going to be stuck with a big problem because they weren't capable of it. So a parent's job, and that's why this is such a hard job, is to figure out together with the child. I am not from those let the child decide. Absolutely not. You're a parent. You're given a responsibility. Part of your responsibility is to help figure it out. But keep your own desires and ego out of it. It's not that he should play the piano because you want to have a child who plays the piano, or because you play the piano, or because you like music. If you genuinely and honestly feel that this particular child will do better not being outside in the sun, but being at home playing the piano, which I am only saying that because I want to give a realistic picture. If that, then why not? Then go for it. But you have to honestly take out all the cultural demands of which school to go to and which things to study, and be honest with what is the best way for this child.
Yeah, but don't you think that the child needs some sort of push from the parent, meaning like, I don't understand what you're saying, that's
Yes,
even doctors
there's
say
no doubt that a child needs a push, but there's two different kinds of pushes, okay? There's a push and there's a pull, okay?
Okay.
You will always do better with positive discipline than negative discipline. You will always do better trying to figure out a way of making it a positive experience for the child to move to the next level of anything.
Right.
Again, I want to reiterate this. There are some children, not some children, every child is born lazy. You know why? You know why? Well, here's why. Because they sit in their crib, and until you come get them out, they're going to scream their heads off. And when they're hungry, they don't care about your day at work. Right? So children are, that's the way God made them. Children are born lazy. So the very first thing you have to teach them is, at the right age, again, you know, progressions are very important. It's not always the greatest thing. You know, we were just talking about this before. A child who walks early is great. A child who's toilet trained, who wants to get out of diapers early, it's great. When the child's ready for it, not when the parents are ready for it. And that's really the point. If you're doing it because you figured out that this is the best step for the child, then yes, an incentive, a push, you know, but if the child feels that the reason they're doing this is to make dad happy, then you didn't get anything.
Because today is the dad, tomorrow is the employer, the boss, so also child will be happy for himself.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Gruman.
There's no question that there has to be a consequence when a kid does something like an act of vandalism. But to me, the way I look at you have to work your way back from the end result. The end result is you want the child to feel and be in a position to understand why he should never do something like that. The first thing you got to do when you sit down with the child is, why did you do that? So maybe he did it because of peer pressure. Maybe he did it because he was bored. Well, if he's giving in to peer pressure, it's not going to help just that he got punished. He has to have a tool to stand up to the peers that are doing things like that. If he did it because he's bored, then you have to figure out why is he bored? What's missing? Now, that doesn't mean that, of course he has to have a consequence. He should probably come up with something, how he could pay for it. What kind of work can he do to earn the money to pay for it, or to work for the school, or do all those things. But the point behind the story is that you have to ask yourself, what do I want the child to get out of this? When this is all said and done, when it's over, what do I want the child to walk away with? That's what education is. Education is, there's a pasuk in the Chumash. Chanoch, not in the Chumash, in the Mishnah. Chanoch lenar al pi darko. That's the famous phrase. Educate a child according to his path. Not according to your path, according to his path. Many parents like to educate their children according to their path. But maybe that child doesn't want to play the piano, and maybe he shouldn't be playing the piano. Maybe he should, but it's what's the child? Chanoch lenar al pi darko, gam kiyaskin. But it has to be something so that when he becomes a zaken, when he becomes old, it'll still be with him. It's a life lesson. It's not something that just solves a temporary problem.
Okay. You said that not to push the child to do whatever you did before. Let's say you said the piano playing, whatever it is. So you saying that to give the child a choice?
No, I'm saying that you should, at the appropriate age for the child, you should try to figure out what's the best way for this child to reach his potential. As a parent, you have to make a judgment. There are certain children that have intellectual capabilities, and if you don't draw them out and don't give them the tools to draw them out, they'll be bored in school, they'll become the biggest troublemakers because you didn't give them the ability to push themselves to work a little harder. Then there are children that if you push them too hard and you ask them to do things, then you're also going to be stuck with a big problem because they weren't capable of it. So a parent's job, and that's why this is such a hard job, is to figure out together with the child. I am not from those let the child decide, absolutely not. You're a parent, you're given a responsibility. Part of your responsibility is to help figure it out. But keep your own desires and ego out of it. It's not that he should play the piano because you want to have a child who plays the piano, or because you play the piano, or because you like music. If you genuinely and honestly feel that this particular child will do better not being outside in the sun, but being at home playing the piano, which I am only saying that because I want to give a realistic picture. If that, then why not? Then go for it. But you have to honestly take out all the cultural demands of which school to go to and which things to study, and be honest with what is the best way for this child.
Yeah, but don't you think that the child needs some sort of push from the parent, meaning like, I don't understand what you're saying, that's
Yes,
even doctors
there's
say
no doubt that a child needs a push, but there's two different kinds of pushes, okay? There's a push and there's a pull, okay?
Okay.
You will always do better with positive discipline than negative discipline. You will always do better trying to figure out a way of making it a positive experience for the child to move to the next level of anything.
Right.
Again, I want to reiterate this. There are some children, not some children, every child is born lazy. You know why? You know why? Well, here's why. Because they sit in their crib, and until you come get them out, they're going to scream their heads off. And when they're hungry, they don't care about your day at work. Right? So children are, that's the way God made them. Children are born lazy. So the very first thing you have to teach them is, at the right age, again, you know, progressions are very important. it's not always the greatest thing. You know, we were just talking about this before. A child who walks early, it's great. A child who's toilet trained, who wants to get out of diapers early, it's great. When the child's ready for it, not when the parents are ready for it. And that's really the point. If you're doing it because you figured out that this is the best step for the child, then yes, an incentive, a push, you know, but if the child feels that the reason they're doing this is to make dad happy, then you didn't get anything.
Because today is the dad, tomorrow is the employer, the boss, so also child will be happy for him.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Gruman.